This week marked the first ever National Fentanyl Awareness Day. More than half of all fatal drug overdoses involve fentanyl. South Florida is an epicenter. A recent case involving spring breakers in Wilton Manors made national headlines. Much of the fentanyl comes into the U.S. over the southern border from Mexico. Local 10's Janine Stanwood and Jason Weitzman went there, where they got unusual up-close access with border agents. And what they were able to document is a must-see.
You guys got some?
A Border Patrol agent taking a young woman into custody after finding these packages taped to her body.
Do you think it's fentanyl?
I'm fairly certain, yeah.
Moments later,
sad today, it's a juvie, 16-year-old girl.
this agent removing bags of drugs from a teenager. Both were inside a shuttle van that was flagged. Where'd you find it?
So this 16-year-old had this entire package, imagine one side from her hip all the way up to her bra, tucked underneath there. The other side, same thing.
So and it was taped onto
And
her
it was
body.
all taped onto her body. It was taped so strong that she looked abnormal in shape.
And that's what tipped you off.
We are at the I-19 immigration checkpoint in Arizona, a main artery north from the Mexico border, some 2,000 miles away from South Florida. U.S. Border Patrol giving us exclusive access to the work they do to stop human smuggling and drug running that has a direct impact on the rest of the country.
The primary purpose for the canines here at the checkpoint is to detect concealed humans. Secondary is for controlled substances. We have seen an uptick in fentanyl here at the checkpoint for sure.
This fiscal year alone, agents in the Tucson sector have intercepted 180 pounds of fentanyl, already outpacing the year before by more than double. Sometimes it's concealed inside bodies or tucked into the hoods of trucks, which is why they use scopes and x-rays. The deadly synthetic opioid, developed decades ago to treat pain in hospitalized cancer patients, is smaller in size and more profitable than marijuana, which has seen a decrease in flow since some U.S. states have legalized it. As fentanyl floods the southern border, it makes its way into American cities, including South Florida, if it's not stopped. In March, West Point cadets in Wilton Manors for spring break overdosed on cocaine laced with fentanyl.
There were multiple people in cardiac arrest in the front yard.
Days later, 4 men in a house in unincorporated Broward County got sick as well. Agents with the Drug Enforcement Administration say the chemicals used to make fentanyl come from China or India, get sent to Mexico, where they're pressed into pills and smuggled across the border, which is why we're here to see for ourselves. We went to the DEA in Tucson, agents showing us some of what they, Border Patrol agents and customs officers, have seized.
So this is a seizure from a checkpoint right near the southern border. These are fentanyl pills. DEA agents say 4 of these bags, about 119,000 pills. So take a look at this. These are pill presses that were seized. What happens is the chemicals and the binding agents go in here, this thing gets cranked, and then those pills get pressed right over here.
Back at the checkpoint,
Can you grab seizure bags?
agents looking at the drugs found on those young women.
We'll field test them. We have a rapid response test. Indicators, light blue pills. They have an M stamped.
The pills are stamped to look like oxycodone, but field tests confirm they are fentanyl, which could sicken anyone, even touching it with bare hands. Inside the other bag, crystal meth. Both alleged smugglers now face criminal charges.
So now she's in trouble, and at least this is off the street.
Yeah.
We're going where the smugglers go.
Let's go.
Underground.
Come on through, watch your head.
This is the Grand Tunnel, a massive storm and drainage channel that moves water beneath the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. It has also moved people and drugs.
The reflective line you see right there, that is the international boundary.
This is the underground route from Mexico to the United States via this drainage tunnel. Agents say it looks a lot different now than it did 20 years ago.
Over the last 20 years, we've been able to take back control of this drainage system.
126 smuggling tunnels have been discovered by highly specialized U.S. Border Patrol agents with the Tucson sector near the border town Nogales. Some, like this, uncovered inside a house in a retirement community.
That spot right there.
Where we are, smugglers have not only tapped into this infrastructure, but they hand dig other illicit passageways like this one.
We were able to figure out that the tunnel existed, and then part of our process is we need to fill it back up so they can't use it again.
This giant gate has stopped smugglers from using the main thoroughfare, and thanks to a partnership with law enforcement in Mexico and technology like cameras, 34 more tunnels have been uncovered in this channel alone since 2009.
We're never going to stop them, obviously, from trying to smuggle narcotics and people, but our presence here makes it more difficult for them.
Just a few miles west and above the surface is the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Nogales Port of Entry.
It was a mixed load,
Where trucks full of food and goods get inspected every day. It's also where massive amounts of drugs have been stopped. Officers seeing a spike in the synthetic opioid fentanyl.
How many fentanyl pills so far have you seized right
so
here?
we're about 3 million for this fiscal year here in Nogales.
3 million pills.
Yeah, 6,000 pounds of methamphetamine. This is a city of 20,000 people. It's not staying here. It's going to the West Coast, the East Coast.
Port Director Michael Humphreys, who happened to have busted the little brother of drug kingpin El Chapo back in 1989, tells us smugglers get creative. Recently hiding fentanyl in crock pots full of meat.
Just gonna take this piece of art home.
Taping it to religious artwork and stuffing it in car parts.
So this is a car battery. They hollow it out. They insert a lawnmower or motorcycle battery. They have a void there, and they'll fill it with fentanyl pills. So what we do here at the border prevents all of that from making it to South Florida, to Ohio, to Kentucky, and New York.
Preventing tragedies like what happened last fall to Melissa Hernandez, a 21-year-old Hollywood woman whose father says took what she thought was Xanax that was actually pressed with fentanyl. She was found dead the next day. So officers here use mirrors, density meters, drug-sniffing canines, and x-rays if they need to give cargo or passengers a second look.
So right now, this truck, this is a mobile x-ray. You can see that it is running past all of these big rigs. It's taking several photos as it goes.
There's also a new state-of-the-art lower radiation x-ray being built so truckers can stay in their cabs while they're being scanned.
This is going to be much more efficient, and it's going to allow us to scan a lot more traffic than we do now. It's not just border security, it's national security. We want to put a stop to this. We're fathers, we're mothers, we have nieces and nephews. We don't want them getting a hold of any of that stuff.
In Nogales, Arizona, Janine Stanwood, Local 10 News.
Stay tuned for a look behind the scenes of that report. Janine joins us next live for a debrief. Local 10's Janine Stanwood with us right now, back from the border with that incredible report, graciously allowing us to crash her Sunday to get a real glimpse at how. Hi, Janine. How did you do that? How did you get such access like that?
Glenna, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And I think you know the answer to that because you do it yourself. You ask questions. We asked a lot of questions of the Drug Enforcement Administration here in Miami. They were so happy to talk to us about fentanyl, where it comes from, what it can do to you. Special Agent in Charge, Deanne Reuter, we do have to give her a big shout out for just giving us so much information when we were doing our initial stories on these fentanyl overdoses of the Spring Breakers, of Melissa Hernandez from Hollywood. So Special Agent in Charge Reuter was just so awesome. And then from there, we started asking questions, where is this stuff coming from? And we've done a lot of stories about drug interdictions here in South Florida, the Coast Guard getting bales of marijuana and cocaine, but the fentanyl, we're not seeing it coming from our shores. So I asked, well, where's it coming from? and it's mostly coming from the southern border, and agents and officers there are stopping it in record numbers. So we wanted to know, what does it look like? What are these agents and officers dealing with? And so our contacts with Customs and Border Protection, so many of them work together. We've learned through this reporting that it's not just the DEA and CBP here in South Florida that works in a vacuum. They all work together. And so we were able to go down there and get incredible access to see what these men and women are dealing with on a daily basis, and it was eye-opening.
Really eye-opening, and it was really interesting to hear one of the agents who said in your report that he acknowledged, we're never going to stop all of it, we're just trying to make it more difficult. So we ride along with you, and we see this woman with the fentanyl strapped to her body and how it comes in and the tunnels, but did they give you an idea of how much they are not able to get? What does get across?
Right. That's the big question. How much is able to come through? And obviously it is coming through because people are still overdosing and people are still dying. But just the fact that this fiscal year alone, which started in October, at the port alone, which is where I think a lot of it comes through, the port director said 3 million pills so far. And they're small. Many of them are small. They're made to look like prescriptions. But that's a lot, and they're really stopping a lot. And so, that's the big question: how much of it is coming through, and what are they doing? And it's a constant effort to improve technology, to improve human intelligence, to get these things off the streets.
The whole fentanyl awareness sort of bubbling up into public consciousness now. You know, the war on drugs is older than we are, and there are people who are addicted, people who choose to do narcotics, but fentanyl isn't one of them. That's not a choice drug. So, I guess people, I will say, I'm just kind of learning a lot through what you're doing. Why fentanyl? Where did that come from? And it's kind of like there's illicit drugs, and then there's fentanyl that's an illicit drug. And so why is this product even available?
It's cheap and it's profitable, and I'm learning too, because I didn't understand it either, and I'm still learning. But I think now that is what agents are seeing over the last few years. This is a drug that is pressed into pills to look like Xanax, to look like Percocet. It made national news. These 14 and 15-year-old kids in the DC area died taking what they thought was Percocet. This woman in South Florida died after her dad said she took what she thought was Xanax. And they're also, fentanyl is also being mixed with illicit drugs. So from what we are learning is that it's cheap, it's profitable. I think it can kill, but it can also produce a very potent high. And unfortunately, that does get people hooked. Not everybody knows, as you said, that they're taking it. And so it's extremely dangerous. And that's why it is such a challenge for these agents on the ground every day.
I don't think you could hammer that home enough, that people who are taking whatever drugs they believe they're taking, whether they think they're prescription or not prescription, they may not know they're taking fentanyl. That's staggering.
No. It's staggering, and it is so lethal that if you noticed in our story, if you noticed in our reporting in Wilton Manors, the local police and fire departments, the agent at the checkpoint in the border, always wearing gloves, it can make you sick even just by touching it. That's how incredibly lethal it is.
You know, I want to, in the minute or so that we have left, I want to go back to the border for a second. The southern border is in the focus of such a political battle right now. And a lot of people don't talk about that there is traffic over the border that is completely legitimate every day. There are people who go to work back and forth, the U.S. from Mexico and vice versa, and business. What did you see, if anything, firsthand about how the border is being secured where you were?
Well, so there are legal points of entry. So the Port of Nogales, which is where we are, which is not the biggest port of entry on the southern border, but it's certainly very busy. Produce goods and services. I mean, things that come across the border legally every day. Of course, people vacationing, people who live in border towns go back and forth to see relatives and to do things. And then, of course, there are those who are trying to smuggle drugs in across the legal ports of entry as well. And then there is the border that is protected by Border Patrol, and that's where people, and this will, segue us into parts 3 and 4 next week, but people trying to cross that border illegally to try to come to the United States for a better life. And there is so much work that's being done. These federal agents who we met are, many of them are immigrants themselves. Many of them have worked through different administrations. So yes, the border can certainly be politicized, but the men and the women who work that border every day trying to stop human smuggling and drug smuggling, they're just doing the work, and they kind of all have that same mission that they've had no matter who's in office.
Yeah, well, good to know that episodes 3 or 4 are still ahead. Good promo for that. Fascinating stuff, and I'm grateful to you for spending a little bit of your Sunday with us. Janine Stanwood, thanks so much.